Hey, welcome folks. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up cross-account access using IAM Roles. Earlier in the week, I had an opportunity to teach an intro to Identity and Access Management, IAM, and this is one of the topics that we discussed during the class. And I thought that it would be an interesting video to make here quickly. So what we're going to do is we've got two AWS accounts set up. And I've done just a little bit of work here. I've got an IAM user set in our first account, and you can see that right here, okay? And this user is currently not a member of any group, and I just tested that they could log in, and you can see they have no permissions whatsoever. So if I just randomly click on a couple things, our demo user here has no access to anything, okay? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start writing code over here. And in the second account, we're going to create a role. We're going to assign a permissions policy to that role. I think for today, we'll just keep it simple and maybe like describe instances or something like that so we can go to the EC2 console and at least see that this is working. And then we're going to assign a trust policy. Okay, so if you're not familiar, the way that I think about this is the trust policy controls who or what is able to assume the role. In this case, we're going to tie this trust policy to this specific account and this user within the account. And then once we've assumed the role, the permissions policy determines what actions we can perform, what services do we have access to, and what actions we can perform. And as I mentioned, I'm going to keep this really simple and probably just set it to like EC2 describe instances. Amazon has a great tutorial about this, and I'm going to steal from this as we go through today. But I just thought that a quick video on setting this up would be helpful as well. So the first thing we're going to do, as I mentioned, if we go back here, in account 2, we're going to set this role. And I'm going to do all this in CloudFormation. So I've pulled up the CloudFormation documentation already, and here's what we're going to build. Okay. So let me find our editor, and I've got my demo project set up. And I'm just going to call this, we're going to call this dev IAM role. Okay. We'll give it a description. And we may need some parameters, so I'll just put these in as a placeholder for the time being. And we're definitely going to create at least a couple resources. So the first thing is we're going to create a role. Oh, sorry, I had that right the first time. And then we have some properties to define for this role. So let's have a look here. We'll go back to the documentation. We're going to need the assume role policy document. This is how we're going to control, or I could say it this way instead, how we are going to limit who or what can assume this role. In my example, I'm just going to limit to our single demo user. So we're going to set that up in the trust policy here. We'll set a description just out of best practice, make sure that we can remember what this is later on. And we are not going to, actually, yeah, maybe in this example, I'll just use a managed policy from AWS. I normally wouldn't use a managed policy, but to demo this today, it might make sense. In a real account, we would create our own customer managed policies, but maybe to keep this easy, we'll use something that comes from Amazon. We won't change the max session duration. We'll leave it as is, which I think it defaults to an hour. Okay. And again, a path is a way that we could logically group things together within IAM. We won't do that today either. Okay, so let's just start at the top here. We'll grab this. And there should be an example here at the end of this. Amazon usually does a good job. Here we go. Okay, so this is kind of what we want. So we've got that. We need to set the version 2012-1017, and then our actual statement. And this is going to be easy. Effect is allow. Okay. Action is STS assume role. Okay. STS stands for the security token service. And then we need to define. Actually, I'm going to pull that up here. I'm going to say principal. Principal. I don't think that's the way you spell principal. Yeah, it is. Okay. There we go. Just making sure. And then this is where we're going to define our user. So a principal can refer to, like, it's basically, the way I think about it is a unique identifier. And you would see a principal defined in a resource policy, which is essentially what a trust policy is, or at least the way that I think about a trust policy in an IAM role. So we want to tie this to a specific user in that other account. Okay? And the easiest way to do this is I grabbed something earlier on from one of our examples right here. I'm going to change this. We don't really need the quotes here, so just to clean it up a bit. And I don't want to hard code anything here, so I'm going to put it up here. And we want this to be the account ID of our demo account. And the demo account is really just what we're using for that IAM user. So we'll call this demo account ID. The type is a string, and we'll pass that in when we create this. And the way that we're going to do that, so it's a little more dynamic, is use the sub command. And I want to say it goes right here. But now as I type that out, I think that's actually the region. Let's go back here and have a look. Yeah, it's the second stanza. So that goes there. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're essentially substituting in this parameter, and we'll pass that parameter when we execute this template. So effect is allow, principal is this. We don't want to allow everybody, and I want to say it's just user slash, I think I just called it demo user, but let's go check that now. We go back over here. Oops, wrong place. We go back here. Yeah, we can steal it from here. So just user slash demo user. User slash demo user. Okay, so this essentially means we're going to allow only this user from this particular account to assume this role. The other thing that we could do here is also add, we would do this in real life, we would add a condition. And I can't remember the code off the top of my head, but you would essentially, we're going to limit the demo user from assuming this role only if they have multi-factor authentication. But the way our accounts are set up, we're not going to set up MFA on this demo user, so we will leave it open for now. But an easy way to add some additional security to your account is add that MFA in. So you might want to do that if you're building this out within your account. Okay, so that's our trust policy. Like I mentioned, we're not going to do a path. We're not going to put the policy right in here. We're actually going to define that in a separate document. Let's go back up here. What else do we need? Oh yeah, we said we were going to do a description, so let's do that now. Keep going to the wrong doc. We'll come back to this. What I'll do is I'll set it up like this for now. We won't change that. We're not going to worry about the path. Permissions boundaries is something that allows you to delegate access control to your users. We're not going to worry about that. We're not going to put an inline policy. We're going to use a manage policy to keep it separated from the role. The role name, because we're going to use CloudFormation, we're going to let CloudFormation generate this for us dynamically. And we'll set up some tags. Okay? Whenever a service supports tags, I would suggest that you do it just to give yourself a little bit of, I'm not sure why that's happening, metadata. So we usually have a set of tags that we use. So production, development, who owns it, and how do we contact that owner. So we'll set these up here as well. Start with environment. This is going to be a string. We will set a default value of development. And if you've watched any of the videos before, we always like to use allowed values. And we'll say development and production. Owner. Let's put our standard setup here. Perfect. So we've got the parameters that we need. We have the role definition. We still need our managed policy ARN, so let's set that up right now. I'm just going to look this up to make sure that that's correct. Managed policy, and here's what we need. Description, again, not required, but let's set it up. We'll call this IAM role managed policy. We won't worry about a group. We won't give it a name. We'll let CloudFormation assign that. We're not going to put it in a path. Now we need our actual policy document. I'm going to do this a little differently. Users, we're not going to attach any users to this policy. We're going to do that through role. So here's our policy statement at the bottom. This looks exactly the same as we saw in the role, for one minor little difference. We're going to say effect is allow action. Let's say EC2 stop instance. I think it's instances. No, I don't know. I'm going to go with that. I have a 50-50 shot, right? Describe will be covered in a different way. We'll say terminate instance. So let's check this. If you're not sure about the actions here, the easiest way is just to quickly look in the Amazon documentation. I'll show you how I do that. Normally I just go like AWS IAM actions and then just the service that you want. So we're going to say EC2 and it'll drop you right where you want to be. So you can see Amazon's got all the different services, and then here are all the actions for each of the services. So I just want to find start, stop, and terminate. Or sorry, no, run. What did we put in there? Stop, start, and terminate. I was right the first time. So let's scroll down here. And see there's a lot of actions. Wow. All right. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, but QRS. Remember your alphabet. Okay, so there it is. Plural. Plural. I'm going to assume this is also plural. So I was right the first time. Okay. And what we'll say here is we're going to allow this action on all resources in our account. You might want to tighten this up a bit. You could tighten this by saying like allow this to be only done by the tags associated to those instances, by a specific region. But just to demonstrate this today, we'll say allow whoever, in this case our demo user, when they assume this role in our development account, they can stop, start. Actually, let's do this. They can stop and start instances. Okay. Let's see what else we need in our policy here. There's our policy doc. Like I said, we're going to assign this in a different way. We're not attaching it to any users, so we're done. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to set a depends on attribute here, and we're going to say that the role depends on the policy document being created. Okay. And if we go back and we look at the role, we have managed policy ARNs, which we left as to do. So in this case, we're going to refer to policy 0. Okay, so that's just going to pass in the ARN from that policy. And we also said we wanted to grant this user read-only access. So let's go find that ARN. And the easy way to do that is we'll go back over here where I have more access. We'll go to our policies and we'll search for read-only. There's quite a few of these as well now, but we'll get to the bottom here. There's our read-only access one, and we just want this. And in this case, we'll just single quote that. Actually, I don't even think we need it, so we won't worry. Okay, so what we're doing here is creating the role, creating the trust policy for that role, and tying this role to a single user. Only the demo user from this account can assume this role. Okay? And then we've got our action, in this case, the STS service assume role. And I mentioned earlier on, you might want to do, okay, I'll put a placeholder here for later. We could add a condition. Add condition to require MFA. Okay. We've decided our description, and then we've assigned 2 policies. This is our own customer managed policy, which allows us to stop and start instances. And then this is just the Amazon managed policy for read-only access. Okay. So let's see if we can deploy this. Remember from here, we want that role to be an account number, what I've called account 2 in our diagram. And in this situation, account 2 is our dev account. So I'm going to jump over to the dev account. And we're going to go to CloudFormation. And we are going to create a new stack. And we'll find this. And we'll see if I've got any typos here quickly. Okay, no typos. So we'll say demo IAM cross account. We do need the account ID of the demo account, which I think I can get off of here just because we've got so many errors. Oh, wait a second. Let me check my diagram to make sure I'm going in the right thing. Yeah, so the user is in the demo account here, and we want them to be able to come to the dev account. So yeah, that's the right ID we need. So there we go, and we'll leave all these as their defaults. Click next. You know, we can do some additional options, and we do have to say down here that we're creating some IAM resources, so we'll click create. If all goes well, we should end up here with a managed policy, a customer managed policy, and a role. Now I'm doing this through the management console today. Normally we would deploy this through some sort of Git process, CI process. We use GitLab to do this. If you've seen any of the other videos, you would have seen me set up some simple CI scripts to do this, but I figured for today we'd do it this way. There we go. So if we go back, we head over to IAM, and we look at roles, we can just do a search here for demo, and there it is. And you can see an AWS managed policy, and there's our customer managed policy. If we go to trust relationships, we've tied it to a single user, and you can see that we have no conditions. Okay. So part 1 is done. What we have to do now is we actually have to provide this user with enough permissions to actually assume this role. Because right now that user essentially, you know, they can't do anything. Okay. They're pretty much well, they have no permissions whatsoever. They can log into this AWS account and nothing else. Okay. So let's go back and have a look here. And the first thing is we want to manage permissions via group membership. Okay. So here is our group definition. Let's go back over here. Maybe. There we go. And we're going to create now, we're just going to call this demo account setup. Right? Really doesn't matter. And we'll give it a description. Okay, and just like we did before, we are going to need some parameters, I would think, so we'll just put that in as a placeholder, and we'll define our resources. So we're just going to say group 0 type is AWS IAM group, and then we'll define the properties. So what do we need here? A group name. Naming a resource can create an unrecoverable error. If you specify a name, you can't perform updates against this. So I actually am going to do, I'm going to let CloudFormation assign the group name dynamically. We don't have any, oh wait, yeah, we will have a managed policy arm. We'll come back to that. No path, no policy. So this is going to be easy. So we'll do the same thing that we did before. Managed policy arm, and this is going to be a to-do item. Whoops, there we go. Good. And we want to assign a single policy to this. And we needed, what was it, a policy document, I think. We'll double check this. The version's always the same. And then we have the statement, and we know it's going to be effect. So allow action. I think it's just assume role. And then the resource is the role in the other account. So I'm going to do this again. We're going to say dev account ID, type string, and we'll get the definition for this here in a second. And I'm going to actually have a look at the AWS demo, or the AWS tutorial for this. So if we scroll down, in step 2, grant access to the role. So this is what we're after. Okay, obviously with our own role update, our role name. So we're just going to steal this for here, and we'll go, okay. We know that this isn't going to be that, so we'll fill that in. And we know this is going to be dev, oops, I keep doing that, dev account ID. So let's go grab the role from the other account. So I'm going to, yeah, I'm in the dev account already. So I need this. So you can see I just want this part here. And we're going to do this like this instead. Maybe a little cleaner. Actually, you know what? Nah, we'll come back to that. This way, I can substitute this in as well. So I have to change the script. I could just modify my parameters later. And I think that's all we need. If I go back and just have a look at their sample, yeah, allow STS assume role. We have our version statement, and then we've got the role. And this here is going to refer to policy 0. And just like we did in the other account, we'll set up a depends on. Remember that CloudFormation will try to deploy all of this in parallel. And in our case here, we want to make sure that this policy statement exists before this. And I see a spelling mistake. Okay, so that's what the depends on does. Basically, it's saying don't create group 0 until policy 0 is done. Then do this. Okay, so that's easy. So let's deploy this as well. We're in our, we want to do this in our demo account. So I'm going to go back over here now. Because this is where our user sits, right? There's our demo user. CloudFormation. And we'll create a new stack here. Demo. And we do need that. Oh, this is gonna mess us up. Actually, hold on. I could do this. Let's see if I left my something in my clipboard. I did not. All right, so hang on a second. Try this again. Do this. And I'm going to paste that in there, and then we're just going to call this demo cross account. That's the role name in the other account. I think I've got this all set properly. We'll find out shortly. Creating IAM again. Policy, and our group should be pretty quick. Always takes longer when you're watching it. I wonder if I typoed something. It's taking a little longer than I thought it would. Go over to IAM. Well, there's our user. There's our group. Okay, it's got the permission. Maybe CloudFormation just hasn't updated yet. There we go. All right. So I'm going to assign this user to the group. Okay. And now at this point, if I've done everything properly, the demo user should be able to assume the role to get access to the dev account. And then they've got read-only access and stop and start. Okay. So we're going to jump back over to the dev account because there's a little piece of information that I need. I want to go in here, and I'm just going to, for the demo today, I'm going to use this. Okay. Again, you might have a different way that you want to assume this role, but this is easy. So I'm going to go back. I'm logged in as my demo user here. Let's make sure we're still logged in. Yeah, okay. All right, and then in theory, I should be able to go like this. Oh, this is dev, isn't it? Dev account. And if all works well, I'm now in my dev account, and if I go to EC2, I should see an instance running in the Canadian region. There it is. I'm sure nobody is on this server right now, so let's see if it works. Stop. There we go. Okay. Now remember though, I don't have actions to do everything, so if I tried to go in here and launch a new instance, unless I set the permissions wrong, let's go like this. There we go. Okay. So really all this user has is the ability to look at all these various services. Like if I go to S3, okay, we should have a few buckets in here, I think. Yeah. If we go to VPC, because they have read-only access, they can see everything, but I gave them those kind of what I'll call elevated privileges to just stop and start that EC2 instance. Get rid of the filter. Still marked stopping, but we're good. So there you go. What we've done is within our development account, we created a role and associated a trust policy to that role that limited what could assume this role. In our example, we said only the demo user from this account can assume this role. And then we created a permissions policy. We actually associated two permissions policies to this. One permission policy was a customer managed policy that gave us the ability to stop and start the instances. And then we had the read-only AWS managed policy that we also associated to this role so that we could see all the services. Okay. So that was the first thing. Then we went over here, we created the group, and we assigned a permissions policy to that group that allowed any members of that group to assume this role. Okay? And when I say any member of the group, if I put another user in there, let's call it, let's say we create a new user called Alice, and we put Alice in the same group. Even though Alice would have, in theory, the ability to assume that role, the trust policy would stop her from doing that because we did tie it to the specific user. Okay? So there you have it, a really simple explanation demo of creating cross-account access using IAM roles from one account to another. I hope that filled in some blanks for everybody. Take care, get out there, build great things, and see you later.